Happy Thursday, Pride Dynasty League. It was a pretty shit week in football, but there is some hope for my Texans. Much like them, a lot of people didn't think I'd get this far either. So instead of and moaning about how I lost to Wubba Lubba Dub Dub no less, let's go ahead and kick this off and review Week 10. Speaking of which, we had Wubba Lubba Dub Dub versus Disabled Vigilantes, and yeah, it was terrible. What more do you want me to say? Out of all of my picks this week, I got one wrong. Can you guess which one? Wubba Lubba Dub Dub unnecessarily gets the victory, pushing my playoff berth into that unknown territory. Next, we had Classy Strippers going up against Dynasty Sage, and like I said, I got all the rest of these picks right. Dynasty Sage doesn't have the firepower to match a playoff hopeful in Classy Strippers. Better luck next year, kid. Next, we had Griffy Cakes going up against The Boss, and did he come to play? The Boss scoring over 350 points, setting the standard. And this is what you're going to have to do when it's going to probably come down to tiebreakers for those last few spots. The Boss doing everything in his power to make sure his team is a playoff contender. Next, we had Stacking Yards going up against Dunder Mifflin. Quite the heartbreaker for Stacking Yards because mathematically they are still viable. But the boys in Scranton want to leave, no doubt, scoring over 300 points. Next, we had Unfuckwittable going up against Agent Smith. And not a lot of trouble for Agent Smith in this one, considering Unfuckwittable scored just a little over 50 points on offense. I don't care who you're playing, that's not gonna cut it. Agent Smith easily gets this victory. Next, we had West Coast Giants going up against those Hollywood Cole brothers. And since the beginning of the season, West Coast Giants has fallen off precipitously, while Hollywood Cole brothers is coming on strong. Doesn't hurt when your quarterback gets almost 50 points. Hollywood Cole brothers with the upset. And last, but certainly not least, we had our game of the week. Redacted ADP 1897 going head to head against Chicago Chalupas. And like I predicted, Chicago Chalupas would dethrone ADP and maintain his dominance atop the power rankings. But before we get to that, we got a little stud dud to clear up. Week 10 fantasy stud is none other than The Boss, with 374 points. This man scoring more points on offense than some people's whole teams. Not to mention, his defense did better. The Boss definitely has the recipe on defense, but if he's cooking on offense, look out. On the flip side, you've got a fantasy dud that seems to be content with this title. 4 weeks running, we have Unfuckwittable setting records in the opposite direction. 143 points. Unfuckwittable has officially become the bye week. If you see him on your schedule, you pretty much can take that week off. You're gonna win. Who does he play next week? Before we get to next week, let's go ahead and take a look at the power rankings for week 11. Starting from the bottom till we get to the top, we've got Dynasty Sage, Wubba Lubba Dub Dub, Unfuckwittable, Griffy Cake, Stacking Yards, Hollywood Cole brothers, all unchanged from 14 through 9. Don't get it twisted, Stacking Yards, Hollywood Cole brothers still have a inkling of hope, while Griffy Cakes, Unfuckwittable, Wubba Lubba Dub Dub, and Dynasty Sage have pretty much given up until the offseason. You can only control what you can control, Stacking Yards, Hollywood Cole brothers. Victories lead to opportunities. Opportunities have a chance to lead to success. Coming in at 8 this week, we've got The Boss. Our fantasy stud is sitting outside the playoff window. At 7, we've got those West Coast Giants. At 6, Classy Strippers. Coming in at 5, Disabled Vigilantes. At number 4, we have Agent Smith. At 3, Redacted ADP 1897. Dunder Mifflin coming in at 2. And sitting on top of the power rankings, we've got Chicago Chalupas. Wait, this just in? We've got a stat correction? No, we don't have a stat correction. Wubba Lubba Dub Dub did beat me. Oh, We have disabled vigilantes going up against Unfuckwittable. And I need Unfuckwittable to continue his fantasy dudness. But it be just my luck. This month turns into the fantasy stud all of a sudden. Next up, we've got Chicago Chalupas going up against Stacking Yards. And this has a potential to be an upset, but I didn't pick it. Chicago Chalupas should get this victory. Stacking Yards pretty much needs this to be a victory to have any hopes of making the playoffs. Next, we have Dunder Mifflin going up against Griffey Cakes. And I don't expect this one to be close. Dunder Mifflin with the win. Lock it up. Next, we have Dynasty Sage going up against those West Coast Giants. And I almost picked this one to be an upset as well because Dynasty Sage may not have a deep team, but if CJ Stroud is going to be a 40-burger week in, week out, who knows what's going to happen. But I'd be putting my money on West Coast Giants because any loss right here would cast a very gloomy shadow on their playoff prospects. West Coast Giants gets the victory. Next, we have Hollywood Cole Brothers going up against Wubba Lubba Dub Dub. And while Wubba Lubba Dub Dub has nothing to play for with the exception of hurting motherfuckers' feelings, Hollywood Cole Brothers cannot afford to lose here to an irrelevant fantasy football squad. Next, we have one hell of a matchup in The Boss going up against Classy Strippers. I almost made this the game of the week due to its importance on playoff seeding. On one hand, we've got fantasy stud The Boss, very rock solid team, going up against our current champion, Classy Strippers. Everything in me told me to pick The Boss, but that's not what I did. I ended up with Classy Strippers. Something about this guy, when his back's against the wall, points seem to come flooding out his ass. I won't be caught off guard by it this week. Classy Strippers gets the win. But now, for our game of the week, we've got Agent Smith going up against Redacted, ADP 1897. Both of these teams, unless something crazy befalls them and they lose 4 straight, should make the playoffs. This is more or less a jockeying of positions and an accumulation of points. Who will accumulate more points? I'm giving this week's matchup to Redacted, ADP 1897. There will be fireworks, and Agent Smith could very well run away with this as he is a fantasy stud magnet. But all signs to me point to that dynamic quarterback duo of ADP 1897. Redacted gets this victory. And those are my picks. Like it or love it. But with 4 games remaining, it's safe to say that there is one team that is not going to make the playoffs this year, and that's Dynasty Sage. That's all I have for you today. I hope everyone has a wonderful week in fantasy football. Everyone except Unfuckwittable. You continue being fantasy dud, and everything in the world will be all right, my guy. Keep focusing on that draft. Be easy. Peace.